Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today's topic is going to be environmental justice. So I'm really excited for this topic. So I'm going to go ahead jump right into meeting agenda. Sorry, if you see me looking to the side, I'm looking at my other screen. So number one, welcome. So I'm going to introduce myself for those who don't know me or who are new joining today's session. My name is Vanessa Gomez Alvarado. I'm an immigrant rights fellow at Siren. Outside of Siren, I'm a senior at the University of California, Riverside. I am pursuing a degree in sustainability and also a minor in media culture studies. So it's really cool that I'm able to use skills that I've learned throughout my college career in today's session. Nikandra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Nakandra. I think most of you should know me by now, but I'm the systems and data analyst here at Siren, also an alum of the youth program. And I met Vanessa at UC Riverside as well.
Yeah. So, okay. Right into the meeting agenda. Number one, welcome, which we just did. Number two, check-in. Three, we're going to talk about volunteer opportunities if you guys are interested. Number five, what is environmental racism? It's a clip, and then we're going to discuss after that a brief history of environmental justice. It's also a clip, and we're going to discuss air pollution, a dangerous reality to low-income minorities. And after that, we're going to have a stretch break, and then we're going to go into facts about the fossil fuel industry. And then after that, we're going to leave it open to open discussions for any questions you guys might have, and then closing it. Yeah. Okay. So check-in, quick reminder to submit your t-shirt designs by Monday so we can look at them and select a design that we want to use for the official Summer Institute shirt. And remember, the winner will get a $50 gift card. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we did go ahead and extend it because we only received a couple. And we want to give everyone a chance to do so. So we're going to give you the weekend. So yeah, make sure to send that in if you're interested.
Yeah. Really encourage it.
There's a question. No, you're not required to send anything in, Betsy. It's just in case you do want to.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
So I'll cover this one real quick. So we have a volunteer opportunity. An organization reached out to us. This organization kind of works with South Asian communities. So they reached out to us about our youth program, seeing if there was any South Asian students who are part of our program who'd like to be a part of a quick PSA, encouraging people to fill out the census. If you're, like a South Asian student, I think they're going beyond the state because I know there was changes in as you learned in the last session, there are some changes to the dates of the census. So if you're a South Asian student and you're interested or know someone who might be interested, go ahead and send us an email.
Okay, so I'm going to do things a little different. We're going to jump right into an open discussion. And so as you guys can see on the screen, what comes to your mind when you hear the word sustainability? And don't be afraid to any wrong answers. This is where we're going to just learn from each other. And then just what comes to mind, it can be anything. Yeah, and you guys can share your thoughts out loud, or if you guys are not comfortable, in the chat box. And yeah, there's no such thing as a wrong answer. Preservation, yes. Slow and ethical production, Low carbon footprint, okay. Anything else? Anything mind? For many generations, yeah. Using resources at a rate that preserves it for many generations, yes. Accessibility to resources, yes. Creating houses/products that are beneficial for people and the planet, yeah. Renewables, yes, renewables. Is there anything else that how to say it, would you think that it's associated with sustainability? Oh yes, economy, yes. Good one. That's a great one. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on some of these real quick. I see that someone else said local grown foods.
Hmm.
Um, these are all awesome. It's also important to also think about in context of, what demographic or what community we're talking about, right? So then when we talk about renewable energy, it's like, okay, sometimes it's not that the technology isn't there, it's that accessibility is not there, right? So maybe like certain communities can't afford to put solar panels on their houses, right? Stuff like that.
Hmm. Strict limits on carpet pollution. Yes. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. You guys have a really, really good, you guys know a lot. Let's see. Preservation. Let's start with that preservation. Do you guys think we are like preserving our environment? Like, I see a couple head nods. What don't like what are we or what as we like as a society are lacking that like are not sustainable, like that we are not. The meat industry, air pollution. Yes, yes. We use a lot of plastic. Yes, yes, yes.
I
Yeah.
feel like carbon fuel's outdated in a way. We use a lot of oil and gasoline, and it's not a very sustainable fuel source.
Hmm. Corporations polluting the air with their waste. Yes. Yes. Fast fashion. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think that like a lot of us like are actually trying to, practice sustainability and really stay away from like, creating more harm to the planet. But I think like I agree with the comment that was said before. I think it's a lot of corporations and big companies that are actually like, polluting and kind of contributing to this toxicity. And we're always told in school or like told like, take shorter showers, drive less, carpool, but it's like, okay, I get it, it is going to make a difference, but what's really going to make a difference is, putting strict limits, like the same comment that she just said, like putting strict limits on corporations. And I think that, yeah, the meat industry, of course, is really, really a big industry, and that's obviously contributing to that. And then obviously the fact that we use fossil fuels, like we can be using a lot of more sustainable energy and like healthier like versions, but like we don't. So I just think that it's really all about like the corporations and not always necessarily about us, because at least for me, like I'm Mexican, and like I know that like my mom always like reuses like a lot of the things that we use. Like we're just very mindful of stuff like that. So I think it's the corporations. I don't think it's individuals or our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, 100% agree with you, Brenda. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Catching up on those chat. Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of times it's like we're also kind of like pushed into thinking that like refusing single plastic use, like yes, that does make a difference, but it's not an individual like problem. It is corporations. They're doing so much like polluting our air, our water, our ocean, like our food, like it's so much, and like there's no regulation, and sometimes the regulations of people who we think are going to protect the environment, us, make sure we have clean air, clean water, don't always do that.
Right. I'd like to add on to Brenda's point real quick because I think she touched up on a lot of things, right? There's this thing that's becoming more talked about, which is corporate responsibility. Has anyone heard about corporate responsibility? Kinda. Yeah, so it's kind of the idea that corporations and different companies just take responsibility for their part in, yeah, corporate social responsibility. Thank you, Kelly. Take, again, responsibility for their part in the global environmental crisis and other types of crises. I saw that some people were talking about, I think it was Nia who brought up, where, for production's sake, we were seizing land from Native people, right? That has to do with sustainability. Right, it's a very like intersectional issue that I think Vanessa will be touching on about. But I mentioned pretty much every session now that I studied economics, but I think it's really important because I took a natural resources economics class where we talk about purchasing power, right? So you as a consumer, your consumer habits will let different corporations know if their behavior is okay, whether directly or indirectly. But by purchasing, and again, has to do with accessibility. Like Brenda touched, not everyone can afford to make the switch, but where you can make the switch, it's important to practice purchasing power in an ethical way, right?
Thank you, Nico. Yeah. Oh, sorry, going back. Oh, went to back. Okay, now that we've covered sustainability, what do you guys think about the word environmental justice? And yeah, if you feel comfortable sharing it out loud or just in the chat box. Oh, sorry. And I guess sustainability and environmental justice, very, very similar like wording, but there's a little difference in them. Sorry, I'm trying to get my chat box. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip to the next one because it will cover, environmental justice. So as you guys can see on the screen, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, this is essentially, if you guys don't know, the agency that's supposed to department that's supposed to make sure our air, our water are safe and drinkable. So this is for the United States. So in their definition, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So this goal will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environmental health hazards and equal access to the decision-making process to having a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work, which is essentially kind of like what Brenda covered a little ago. But this is the definition. Sorry, I can't see the chat.
Do you want me to read off some of the things from chat?
Yeah, I got it now, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Affected, yes. Oftentimes low-income minority people are affected at disproportionate rates and they do not provide the same resources. I've been watching Down to Earth with Zac Efron, and it teaches how different countries are trying to be sustainable about climate change. Flint, Michigan is a big environmental injustice. Yes, yes. All right, okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into what is environmental racism. Sorry. Okay. Can you guys hear the audio?
When we think of racial injustice, we think police brutality or the criminal justice system. But what about our air and water? Environmental racism. It's about policies and practices that discriminate against communities of color by making them live near landfills, sewage plants, and other polluting facilities. And while poverty has a lot to do with it, the leading environmental justice expert told me this.
Racism trumps class. Even middle-income African Americans are more likely to live in more polluted neighborhoods.
In fact, one study found that Black Americans making $50,000 to $60,000 a year are more likely to live in polluted neighborhoods than white Americans who make just $10,000 a year. Flint, Michigan is a textbook case of environmental racism. It's where 100,000 residents have been poisoned with toxic water contaminated by high levels of lead. Why? Because the state was trying to save a buck. Flint is around 57% Black, with 40% of its population living in poverty. Residents protested the dirty water for over a year, but were ignored. And that's how environmental racism plays out. Minority communities have much less political clout, so regulators can and often do ignore them. And not far from Flint is Detroit, where 83% of the population is Black. It's home to the most polluted zip code in Michigan.
Zip code is the most powerful predictor of health, and all communities and all the zip codes are not created equal.
Southwest Detroit is surrounded by a lot of industry like salt mining, steel production, tar sands, oil refining, and coal burning. And that's meant that 1.6 million pounds of chemicals enter that community yearly. Not coincidentally, Wayne County, where Detroit is, has the highest number of children's asthma cases in the state. But look, environmental racism isn't just a Michigan story, it's an American story. Take, for example, Louisiana's Cancer Alley, an 85-mile stretch along the Mississippi River. It's known for its over 200 petrochemical plants and a high rate of cancer, mainly among Black residents. So is there anyone protecting folks from environmental racism? Well, there's supposed to be. The Environmental Protection Agency has a special department called the Office of Civil Rights. But in its 22-year history, the office has never formally found a single case of discrimination. In fact, more than 90% of communities that make complaints find them rejected or dismissed. On top of that, the Guardian newspaper recently revealed that U.S. authorities across the country are deliberately distorting water tests in cities like Detroit and Philadelphia to minimize the reported amount of lead in the water. Environmental racism, while not always the most visible form, is also widespread. So when is enough enough?
All right. So what did you guys think of the video? I prepared some questions. Have you or your family ever experienced environmental racism? What are some forms of environmental racism that you have witnessed? I saw Nina, you wrote, there's a lot of issues concerning environmental racism in the Philippines. Lots of indigenous people are fighting for the environment. Yeah. There's a lot of, okay, never mind. I'm not gonna mention it because we'll get to it eventually, sorry. But yeah, have you or anyone in your family ever been exposed to environmental racism? Similar to the people of Hawaii. People of Bolivia as well. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, like sustainability, environmental racism is not just something that happens in the US, it happens everywhere. So I have a personal example. I was born in Porterville, California, which is in the Central Valley. And for those who don't know, the Central Valley has like probably the worst air in the area. And as a result, it leads to a lot of kids and like people in that area with like asthma, pneumonia, bronchitis. My baby sister, she was just 3 months and she got pneumonia, and the reason why is because we lived in like such a place where it didn't have like good air, and that affected her, and she was like a baby and she had to be in a hospital at such a young age, and just because we didn't live in like an area that has good air. So that's something I've definitely experienced. Jacqueline, yes, I live in the Central Valley and everyone in my immediate family has asthma. Yeah, it's something very like that happens a lot in Central Valley, the Inland Empire. It's always low income minorities who always have these higher probabilities of having respiratory illnesses just because of where they live. Has anyone seen different forms of environmental racism? And this can be either, like you don't have to necessarily, if you know someone, sorry, I was reading the chat. I frequently visited border cities of Mexico, and I remember my family telling me that you could actually smell the difference of air quality when you cross the county line. Yes, yes. Also, whenever you go into like a place where it has a lot of trees, the air is just so crisp and clean, and sometimes you kind of just like, this is how air should be. Does anyone
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you also see that in housing? I know that in some zip codes, the upkeep of structures and the safety of that structure, like you get mold, you get more people spraying for pesticides in the grass where the kids play. Is that also considered discrimination through the environment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I can add on to that too. Yeah, I mean, that's very much done intentionally, right? A lot of the times in the name of profits, to, you know, whether the landlord is more interested in paying for like, you know, cheaper paint that's filled with lead, right? And a lot of what we heard was years ago when a lot of housing was being created, a lot of landlords, particularly in communities that were maybe redlined for, people of color or immigrants or whatever it may be, were using lead-based paints that are carcinogenic and stuff like that. So very similar to how, Flint was, where they decided to cheap out on human lives essentially. So yeah, very much so.
We're gonna cover it, or some of the videos that we're gonna watch covers essentially like your questions. So I didn't want to go too much in depth, but yeah, really great question. Oh, sorry, my mouse is very sensitive. Yeah, does anyone have anything else to share? What did you guys think about the clips? Is this something like new that you guys have seen, or you guys kind of seen it before, or you already knew about this? And you guys can talk out loud or in the chat. Just curious to see like if it's something you guys have known, or is it the first time seeing it? Oh, sorry. Definitely have heard. Where did you guys learn? So some of you guys said that you guys have learned it before. Did your school teach it? Or is it something that you learn maybe from like, I guess like a session like this where is talk about it, or social media? Through social media? But this since like in high school. I have seen it before, but not done deep dive. Social media, webinars, never school. Social media on my own through research. Another workshop similar, definitely through social media. Environmental session class. For my own. Wanted to understand. Nina, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you want, if you're comfortable, do you want to talk about the Philippines and like how they deal with environmental justice and racism?
I don't mind talking a bit, but there's been a lot of issues because there's been some companies like Nestle that have been really trying to like slowly take over like the land in a ways, and well, they are by setting up factories, and this affects a lot of the people back in the Philippines because there's a lot of people that basically live off the land because a lot of people there are living in poverty, and as a result they have to rely on that, and these companies who have like way more money than these people will ever see in their lifetime are basically taking that land and therefore depriving them of the basic necessities that they have for life. Because I think it was Greenpeace or something, or an organization like that, well, that was like calling out Nestle specifically in the Philippines because of how they were treating things. Because since it's overseas, they're not subject to a lot of things that they would be in trouble for over here in the U.S.
Yeah,
It was Greenpeace.
sorry. Yeah, and this is like, thank you so much for sharing and talking about that. And it's something that happens in a lot of like third world countries. Essentially, the U.S. kind of comes in, it's like, oh, you have this valuable resource. Let me help you. Like, no, or like, help me help you. And essentially, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna come into here to your like small town. We're gonna build some infrastructure, give you light, giving like all these like good things to be like a better society and just like culture. Being a lot of times, but it just doesn't end up. It's always in the favor of like the rich countries. They don't care about like the lower countries. They don't pay them enough. They let them live in terrible conditions, and they also work in terrible conditions. And yeah, oil companies constantly take advantage of poor countries. Yeah, I think right here in Richmond there's oil drilling and there's issues of air quality. Yeah, in Bakersfield when you're taking the 5, I think, I don't know, I don't really drive, but I think it's called the 5. When you pass by Bakersfield, you can instantly smell like all the oil. You can see like all the drilling there. Public force. Yeah. Does anyone have any additional thoughts before we move on to the next clip? No? See a couple head nods? Okay. So next up is a brief history of environmental justice. sorry.
Nationally, the facilities where we dump our garbage and
Oh, sorry. I don't know why that happened.
Nationally, the facilities where we dump our garbage and
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Just don't make it big, I think. Just leave it small. I don't know why that's happening.
There tries a charm.
Nationally, the facilities where we dump our garbage and process dangerous chemicals tend to be located in poor and minority communities. The people who live there have little or no protection from the industries around them, and things could get worse. So there's this idea of environmental justice. It's pretty simple. Communities shouldn't be forced to deal with more pollution because they belong to a certain race, national origin, or income bracket. Yet America has struggled over the years to implement any serious policy that actually protects these communities. So let's lay out the ways the government has failed them.
We will not allow Warren County to become a dump site.
The fight for environmental justice took off in 1982, when residents of Warren County, North Carolina mounted mass demonstrations against a plan to dump contaminated soil in a landfill in their community. The EPA investigated 4 similar landfills in southern states and found that they were all located in Black or low-income neighborhoods. In 1987, the United Church of Christ Racial Justice Commission found that around the country, hazardous waste facilities were more likely to be located in mostly minority communities. Amid mounting proof, the federal government was forced to act.
George Herbert Walker Bush.
So in 1992, President George H.W. Bush founded the Office of Environmental Justice inside the EPA. 2 years later, President Bill Clinton signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to consider environmental justice in all of their policies, as well as extending civil rights protection to environmental discrimination. But Congress never passed a bill to make Clinton's executive order law. Then came George W. Bush. His administration shifted the focus of the Office of Environmental Justice from protecting low-income and minority communities to all people, leaving vulnerable populations without a federal environmental advocate.
80% of New Orleans, including much of downtown, is underwater.
Under Bush, many environmental civil rights claims were rejected or delayed for years. In 2009, after President Barack Obama's election, his administration recommitted to environmental justice.
Generally speaking, in this country, a lot of environmentally problematic facilities tend to be located in places where poor folks live.
Yet, during the 2 years Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, they didn't file a single bill focused on strengthening environmental justice protections. Passing major environmental legislation faded further when Republicans took control of Congress in the 2010 midterm elections. Now, President Donald J. Trump is making good on his vow to weaken the EPA.
Environmental protection, what they do is a disgrace. Every week they come out with new regulations. They make it
Who's going to
impossible.
protect the environment?
They will be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit.
This budget, a 31% cut to the EPA, $2.6 billion cut away from the EPA. That's what the president wants.
As the EPA loses funding and regulations are rolled back, vulnerable communities may very likely fall through the cracks. I'm Talia Buford. I'll be covering these communities and digging into systemic environmental injustice. If you have something to tell me, email me at talia.buford@propublica.org.
So what did everyone think? Have a couple discussion questions set up. Do you think our government is doing enough to support us, to protect us? No? I see a couple head nods. Not enough, no, definitely not. Government is not doing enough. Can always do more. Clearly not. Yeah. It seems like that it's not a priority. Sustainability has never been a priority. remembering how Trump advisors wanted to modernize national parks by adding Wi-Fi. I don't think they're doing enough to protect its citizens nor its environment at all. Citizens at all. Prioritizing corporate money over communities, yes. It has a lot to do with capitalism. Yeah, money has always taken priority. Yeah. Our representatives take money from companies that have harmed the earth. They could care less about the air we breathe. Not enough. Everything that gives the government more money is what they'll go for. Yeah. Yeah. One of you guys mentioned, Larissa, she mentioned capitalism. Yeah. No, they prioritize capitalism. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Do you guys know what capitalism is?
I think it's also important to like, more than just like generalizing capitalism. It's like there's the idea. We won't go too deep into this, but like crony capitalism. I don't know if any of you have heard of that term. No. So I'm not super familiar because I'm not a political scientist, but it's the idea that capitalism, but that works for people in power in these structures of power, right? A lot of the time where we see very clear corruption going on. I mean, it was very clear with the stimulus packages, what we found out where the money was going, very clearly not meant for small businesses like they had mentioned, stuff like that. So again, this is where it comes back to a lot of with the corporations and capitalism. We have to send very, very strong signals. They're called market signals with our purchasing, right? A lot of what people have been doing, I'm sure all of you have seen on social media, where there's campaigns to stop purchasing from certain companies, right? Especially when we find out the kind of detriment that they have. I know, Nia, you mentioned Nestle. Companies like that do like CPG, consumer packaged goods, Unilever, all those companies, tremendous amounts of waste creation in low-income countries and communities. Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Okay, so I think a couple of us knew what capitalism is, and I'm just gonna go briefly over like how kind of like capitalism and like how our environment are kind of like how it's all like interconnected. So in our capitalistic mentality, or like in like the capitalistic lens, we care only about money. Like you guys mentioned it, we prioritize our kind of economy. Like that's number one. And then when it comes to like capitalism, like when you have that lens on, you're trying to make money. So they see trees, they don't see air, like oxygen. They see wood. I was like, oh, we can build this, cut the tree, make the wood, build a house, sell that house, profit. That's like the mentality that the type of have. It's a system where markets are considered free, limited. Yeah, yes, yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought now. Shouldn't have seen that. But yeah, it's always like, when we have that capitalistic lens, it's really hard for people also when we're born into that society and we grow up into everyone tells us like the economy, that's number one. So it's sometimes like it's really hard to prioritize. It's not that hard, but it's like making that mental like shift and lens. It's like, okay, we can prioritize our environment and also keep the economy in like good. White supremacy, yeah.
Something that's also really important when speaking about capitalism, because generally when we have these conversations, and if you have any thoughts about this, feel free to like jump in. We tend to talk about things pretty generally. I know I'm sure we've all seen online where people are like pro or anti-capitalism or pro and anti-socialism, but these political ideas, they are created in like models, right? Political scientists have created these in models. Meaning that all of these are under controlled, what are they called? In controlled settings, right? That's not how the real world works. Nothing is ever that controlled. We have billions of people with different thoughts and stuff. So anytime we talk about capitalism, it's never actually the capitalism that's supposed to be. Right, because capitalism is also the idea that the market is going to regulate itself, meaning that no one's ever going to be the one superpower. Meaning capitalism is the idea that it's also going to benefit the consumer. Not that it's correct, but that's also not necessarily what's happening here. But it is a capitalistic society, right? So, you know, again, it's always important to look at those lenses, especially when we're trying to talk to someone else who's seeing it through the opposite lens, right? Because we want to be able to advocate not just to the people who agree with us, but the people who may not agree with us, and maybe looking at things a little differently.
Discussion question number 2. What are some solutions that you can think of when it comes to like protecting the government? And this is more of like a brainstorming. Yeah. And again, like if you guys don't feel comfortable talking out loud, chat box. Larissa, more regulations on large company taxes. Yes, agree 100%. Solutions would be placed on big businesses and distribute funds from federal budget to sustainable infrastructure and suffering communities. Amazon, yes, yes. Carbon tax, tax the rich, yes. What's maybe something that I guess as individual, as in like individuality, what are some things that as we as a person can do? No one should be a billionaire. Yeah, using public transportation, advocate/elect officials that have similar ideologies, stop supporting companies like Amazon. Yeah. Know where you're buying from. Good one. Yeah. Support small/local businesses. Shop sustainable. We can take care where we invest our dollar. Yes. Also, when you're supporting small and local businesses, you're also losing, you're not traveling as far. So it's like less greenhouse gas emissions. Be mindful of tourist habits, shop secondhand. You can save a lot of money like that too. Agree with it, no, yeah. Stop buying fast fashion. Eat more plant-based foods and less meat, yeah, yes. Do you guys ever like go, how would I say, at least, okay, so I want to say like I'm pretty sustainable. So I want to say like to all my friends, like close friends and like family, they know that like I care. Like if they leave the faucet like running, I'm just like, hey, like turn it off. Like there's no need for you to like have the faucet running. Reuse containers, plant whenever you can, yes. Thrifting, reuse, yeah. So sorry, do you guys make the effort of like educating other people, I guess, or creating like those, like telling people about like, hey, like maybe not using plastic straws, like you don't have to use a straw. Organized park cleanups, so like, yes. When you start investing, see through companies greenwashing. Do you guys know what greenwashing is? No? Okay, so essentially, okay, kinda. Okay, so essentially greenwashing is, we're gonna see, you wanna buy, ooh, I have a perfect example. Yeah. So do you guys remember from Dawn soap, whenever like the huge oil spill happened and they said like, oh, if you buy our dish soap, we're gonna take it or donate it to animal shelters to help like all the birds who were covered in grease. So yeah, that's like a good example of greenwashing, because they were claiming that they were taking these donations to like these agencies, but like you actually had to do more than that. Like just by buying it didn't really help. Like you had to like physically go online, put in like the barcode and all that stuff. So essentially that's not a great example, but it's like, it's kind of like misleading. They're telling you like, it's like, oh, organic, and it has a picture of like a little farm. So you're buying like eggs, and it says like farm, organic, natural. That's like that image. They're greenwashing and making you think it's sustainable, healthy, like fair trade, zero waste, it's helping people, but it's not. Reformation clothing, greenwashing. Yes. Yeah, but that's a very vague example of greenwashing. So like maybe next time you guys are at the store and you guys see a product that says it's sustainable, examine it, look like a little deeper, and you can usually always tell. Say you see any like common name and you go online and you go like look at like what they're doing, if they're offsetting carbon emissions, then maybe it makes sense why they have that. But a lot of times they don't do that, and it's just for names, so they can entice a person who is trying to be more sustainable, and it also tends to be slightly more expensive. And yeah.
I think I'm gonna say her name. Mader has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. It was like, well, what I wanted to say was that like, although like personal responsibility and like choosing where you put your dollar is like really important, 100 companies in the US contribute to 70% of like emissions in the country, like 100 companies. And so like when we talk about like what solutions like realistically are, like I think like plastic straws are like 0.002% of like the plastic in the ocean. And I feel like the movement of like pushing like personal responsibility onto people is like sort of like sometimes is used as a distraction to like put the blame on individuals rather than the companies that are making the products. So although I support like regulating companies and like what they put in their products that are harmful and like punishing the companies, I don't feel like we should punish individuals for that, because like when you like the cheapest thing is like obviously going to be terrible for the environment, like the company's like not going to put effort into making it safe for the environment for someone who can't afford better things. So like I went through a thing where I felt really guilty for not being able to like buy green things, and like I don't know. So yeah, that's something that I like wanted to say.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, there's also adding on to what you're saying, there's kind of been like this like image of like in order to be like sustainable, it's always like you have to buy products and you have to buy like more things. In order to be sustainable, you have to like spend money to be sustainable. But a lot of times it's kind of like the image and narrative that's been created in order to like trying to be zero waste, but that's incorrect. It's so like it's not like very realistic. Example, like how we're talking about like in Latinx like communities, we have like, I think it's like in the culture to be more aware of like our resources. So like just simply if you buy like a glass of like Alfredo sauce, it's glass, repurposing that. Yeah, it's kind of like that is also like zero waste, that's also sustainable, but that's not what gets shown. It's always like you have to spend money to like be sustainable. But
real quick, I think Alejandra had her hand up, and then Jocelyn also has.
Thank you, Nico. I can't see.
No, it's okay. I'll keep track of it. Alejandra, did you still need to or want to say something?
Yes, I have something to say, and it kind of relates to what you guys were talking about right now. I think also is related to greenwashing and how you need to buy new products to be sustainable. And I think that comes into greenwashing and how companies make it seem as you need these metal straws or you need these containers because they're made out of bamboo and they can be used, like they can be composted, or I've seen a lot of like phone cases that do the same thing. And it comes out, all companies are like this, and some companies do really do that. Like bamboo containers, they have plastic in, so they're not 100% compostable, and the lid can be plastic, and that's just greenwashing. You can be using products that you already buy, like plastic containers that come with products you already use, and reuse those rather than buying new sustainable products that are not really sustainable.
Real quick, Alejandra, it was a little hard to understand. Just what I got from it, in case other people weren't able to fully hear. I think you were trying to cover greenwashing, how some things claim to be compostable, but not really that compostable, or not compostable for at home. So yeah, so just keep in mind that some things are industrially compostable, but not like at home compostable. And then you had also touched, again, Alejandro, maybe you can let us know in the chat, that you had also touched on purchasing and how you were mentioning, just kind of reiterating what Vanessa was saying, that you don't necessarily need to purchase more or purchase sustainably right now to be sustainable. So I just want to make sure I clarify for those of you who may not have been able to hear. I know it was a little choppy.
Yes. Hopefully you can hear me a little better now.
Like a tiny bit better.
Okay, I'm gonna use this chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
What you covered, yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, if you could just put it in the chat, that'd be super appreciated. Sorry. Jocelyn, did you have something to say as well?
Yeah. So I think also, I feel like the connection between the government putting more priority into corporations is how much money the corporations is able to give to candidates. And one of those reasons for that, or what contributes to it, was this case. I think it was like Citizens United versus, I forgot who the other person was, but it was basically saying how like the corporation is like seen as an individual, and because of that, folks, yeah, thank you, Kelly. So because of that, corporations are able to donate as much money as they can to presidential candidates. So I feel like if we were able to overturn that, that could give less money to presidential candidates and put more focus on the people and getting donations from them.
Right. So just to clarify a little bit, you were talking about campaign finance laws, right? The way campaigns are financed for election years?
Yeah.
Nice. Sorry, I'm seeing some things online. Yeah, as I think a lot of you can see, a lot of it has to do with economics, right? So I would greatly encourage you all as an economics major to take classes on economics. Economics is actually not just about money, it's about value, right? So value can be a lot of things. Value can be your time. If you value the environment, if you value happiness, that's actually, there's like measures for that and stuff. So I would very much encourage you all, especially if the environment is something that you care about a lot. Economics plays such a big role, more than I think most would think, right? And I'll hand it back to Vanessa. I think that's everyone who had raised their hand.
Does anyone have any last questions / comments they'd like to make? No? All right, we can go ahead and move on. The next clip. Oh.
Air pollution kills thousands of Americans every year. Poor people and African Americans are disproportionately at risk.
I wake up in the mornings and can't breathe. I have bronchial asthma. It's from asthma, but it's deeper. Certain times and certain smells, it affects me. And there's nothing I can do about it.
LaToya and Alan Lee lived in the Orlando community of Paramore. It's a historic Black area that has a highly contaminated site.
If it's contaminated, poison, that could be airborne or ground absorbed, don't build no residential homes, apartment, condos, town. It don't need to be in the area, period. They should have thought about that before they must build whatever came first. Right?
Yeah, it's just trying to cause.
That's what I got to say. And that should be for everywhere, man. Everywhere. No contamination should be residential.
I know I scared my family. I know I scared them. I scared myself.
LaToya Lee died from cardiac arrest the day after she sat down for this interview. She told HuffPost that pollution in the area agitated her respiratory problems. Her death came days before the family planned to move into another neighborhood.
I just hope that nobody else gets sick from any of this. The sad thing about it is when I leave from out of here and go somewhere else, like to the new house, I've been in there and it just sat in there. I can breathe fine. I'm not short of breath. None of that. And I've actually noticed that the last 2 times that I've left here and gone to the new house. So it's a lot going on with the air around here. It's a lot.
HuffPost met up with Alan a few weeks after LaToya's death. He's moved into their new home and plans to raise their daughter and her 2 other children alone.
Tell y'all the truth, man. This is my first time, y'all. I'm trying not to cry for y'all not talking about it. It ain't easy because I'm young. And it ain't just because of that. I lost my daddy. I wasn't there for that. I lost my mama while I was locked up. I wasn't there for that. You know, it's a lot of other reasons. But when you have to sit down and do it yourself for real, life is not a joke. Time don't wait for nobody. No matter how many times you say, wait or hold on. And like I said, we weren't ready for this. We really weren't.
I'm not gonna kid you. I was so angry when I found out LaToya had passed. But knowing her spirit, I couldn't take that anger and just let it fester. I had to make good out of it. I had to do the right thing.
Family friend Lawana Gelzer has spent the last 5 years educating residents about the local Superfund site. That's a hazardous waste site that the government identifies for cleanup. There's a Superfund site in the Paramore community, but Gelzer says there are other contaminated lots in the area. LaToya and Alan had lived across the street from the Superfund site, which was the former Orlando gasification plant. The groundwater and soil here are contaminated with coal tar and other toxins. Tico Energy currently occupies the lot, but it is not one of the companies currently tasked with cleanup. And while the EPA approved a plan for cleanup in 2013, the work has yet to begin.
Back in the 50s, the 60s, early 70s, anything was allowed to happen in a Black community. So dumps, no cleanup, no notification, improper zoning, commercial right beside a residential home. It was allowed in this community. So this is not something that started yesterday. This has been going on for a long time.
Paramore isn't alone. Landfills and hazardous waste sites are most often located in poor, non-white communities. And a recent study confirmed that people of color are more likely to be exposed to the transportation-related pollutant, nitrogen dioxide, than white people.
Personally, I just really need more individuals to understand the need to do a true health disparity study in the community. That are other individuals get sick because of where they're living at? And how do we make that happen? With all the resources that I see the city spends on venues, soccer stadiums, Citrus Bowl, Creative Village, all of the dollars that has been spent in the Paramount community, couldn't you set aside a couple of $1,000s to do a health disparity study to go and see on the last 5,000 people what is truly happening to the people in the community? Are we ill? Do we have one of the highest asthma rates because we're in a Superfund site? So a sign can go a long way. It's a form of expression for me. Citizens have rights too. You have issued a blank check, and could you please stop doing the corporate welfare?
Gelzer attends city council meetings with the hopes of getting the community tested and cleaned up. Her family now runs a daycare center in the house she once grew up in. She says her fight is for the most vulnerable residents.
I've been told in a city council meeting, it's no contamination, or we don't have anything to worry about. Really? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Why do you continue to lie to us, the citizens that you were elected to represent? Is it something that we've done differently, or do we look different? So we tell everybody, we're here, we need help, but ultimately we need to educate our community on how to get what we deserve. If the EPA has saying it's going to cost $40 to $60 million to clean up that one contaminated site, that Superfund site, that's just one.
The mayor's office told HuffPost that the Florida Department of Health concluded the Superfund site does not pose a health risk. The city also said it expects construction of the initial phase of site remediation in the first quarter of this year.
Right here is Division Street. Those are apartments, condominiums, all kinds of money. This is the west side of Orlando, missing all the economic growth. It's many days I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to fight. I don't want to be the only one down at City Hall. It's an uphill battle. I just want people to know we're here. I get flustered. I get upset a lot because I'm David. And I have a slingshot and a rock. And Goliath is my government.
Everybody stay woke. Pay attention to what's going on. But don't ever let your voice not be heard. No matter what you're going through. Because everybody has their own opinion. And if you don't speak on your opinion, you're not going to be heard ever by any of the officials. Doesn't matter who's in office. If you don't get out there, if you want them to know something, you got to get out there and tell them. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. It's going to be the same old thing over and over again. And that's basically, that's all it's going to boil down to it.
Hi everyone. I hope that video wasn't too much. I found it very, very powerful, and it's always like the more you learn about sustainability, environmental racism, environmental injustice, it's always so upsetting just learning that we allow this, or not like we, but like other people in power, people who are supposed to protect us, like do these things. And it was I resonated with like this video, just seeing hearing her and just like living in an area that doesn't have the best air, and then she was gonna move, and then that happened. Yeah, very, very emotional. But yeah, so I've brought them some questions. We kind of already went over it. Do you or anyone in your family suffer from like birth defects, respiratory illness like asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, and other health risks due to like the environmental injustices in the area? Yeah, and sorry. Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat box or just out loud. But yeah, I think it's becoming very clear that environmental racism, it's not a coincidence. It's not like, it's purposely done. Yeah, they know what they're doing. And yeah, they do it because they know they won't get any like pushback. They can easily just like walk over these people, violate their human rights, and just treat them like this. Not a coincidence at all. Yeah. Does anyone want to share?
For number one, my parents are from Bolivia, and specifically my dad, he grew up in like kind of like this small village area in rural Bolivia, and both of them have asthma, and now both me and my sister have pretty bad asthma. So I'm pretty sure it's inherited, and it started off with like probably like the lasting effects from imperialism and colonialism that happened and impacts Bolivia to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. yeah, like how I mentioned earlier, my younger sister, my older sister, both have pneumonia. They've both gotten bronchitis. I think my sister has all three of them, has had all three of them. So it's, yeah. Even though it's, I know, yeah, when he was a kid, yeah. And it really is the air. It's the air, yeah. And it's always the area. You can always tell, like, which areas are lower income because you can always kind of tell, like, by the air quality. You can use, like, the air quality as an indicator. Also has asthma. We've always lived by the freeway. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and move on to the next discussion. Oh, just kidding, it's stretch time. All right, so yeah, just stop the video, mute yourself, and we'll take a 5-minute stretch. All right, just one more minute. Okay, it's 6:41, so folks can open up their video again. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. Okay. So our next topic is going to be the America's fossil fuel industry. And this is also a really great idea just for your final project. This was actually one of my final projects that I had to do last year. No, go back. Okay. So I hope you guys can see this good. So I made a Instagram story. Yeah.
Sorry, did you put this on the syllabus? Maybe it's easier for them to follow along on their own computer.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't.
Or do you want to put the link in the chat?
Yes.
It's a little hard to see on the screen.
Sorry. Okay, hang on. Stop share.
Yeah, we're going to be talking more about the final project next time as well, next session. But this is just an example.
Okay. So there's the link. Okay.
You sent it to just me.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
You have to make sure to click link to everyone.
Wait, Nico, can you put it on everyone? Just can I see everyone? Okay. Sorry, I'm not that tech savvy. Just kidding, I'm just really embarrassed. Okay. Wait, you guys can't see my screen. Okay. All right. So I hope you guys can see it. If not, click on the link. So yeah, this is for my Snapchat story. So it's America's fossil fuel and where our energy comes from. There's a date that I did it. Yeah, so ever wonder where our nation's energy comes from? A lot of people don't really care. A lot of people just don't know. So as you guys can see on the graph, 37% of our energy comes from petroleum. And this is the US, just the whole US as a nation. Natural gas is 29%, coal is 14%, nuclear power is 9%, and renewable energy is 11%. So that's 89% of America's energy comes from fossil fuels. Yeah, so coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear power, these like vast majority, these fossil fuels produce the vast majority of America's greenhouse gases, and it's our energy. That's where our energy is coming from. I know the image is really small, but as you can see, there is a lot of all over the map, and this is oh, you can't see. It's like nuclear, fossil fuels, fracking, natural gas, and this is all over the United States. There might be more because this was like an outdated graph. This is also like a year old. So yeah, that's a lot of nations, and California is kind of cut off, but there's a lot. I mean, you can see other, yeah, as you get to the East Coast, there's a lot more. So dirty energy impacts, like we were talking earlier today, it causes like health issues. Researchers found that expecting mothers living natural gas wells had a high chance that their baby will have congenital health defects. And also common to this is miscarriages. Birth defects are common when near fossil fuel and like fossil fuel plants. And this information is out there and not a lot gets done. There's like studies, there's a lot of studies. So, yeah. So after Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election, he resurrected the Dakota Access Pipeline, which became operational in 2017. I might be wrong in this, but I think now in 2020, it's paused or no longer. But yeah, some impacts are oil spills, which disrupts and completely devastates the environment. It pollutes the water, pollutes the air, messes up ecosystems, cultural disruption of indigenous people. Yeah, like I don't think you guys are shy of knowing this now. Like it's always when there's they want to build something that's not good for the environment, it's always towards poor people, low income, indigenous people, and this is a cultural disruption. Yeah, female-based violence from workers who are brought to the pipeline. So this is like when people, or workers are come into like the land, they don't respect the culture, they don't respect the people, and they bring violence. Women in that area can get raped. Yeah, so after Donald Trump, he said, thank you next to the the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which essentially commits 187 countries to keep rising global temperatures well below 2%. So a lot of these, again, it's like people who are supposed to protect us, make sure we have good air, clean air, good water, do questionable things. Once he got elected and he filled his cabinet with all his pals, Myron, actually I'm not gonna pronounce these, but yeah, all of these people are climate changers, deniers, doubters, and blame shifters. So how can we have people in our government saying like fighting for good, making sure like they're doing good for us when they don't even believe climate change is real? As you can see, again, sorry, the picture's cut off, but Rex Tillerson was the former Secretary of State. Scott Pruitt was the Administrator of Environmental Protection Agency. Again, that's the department and agency that's supposed to make sure all the nation's parks, air, everyone's like has good clean air and resources. Tom Price, Health and Human Services, Transition Advisor. So it's careful because all these people are in positions of power and they don't believe in climate change. And this is dangerous because they have great influence and they determine what our future is like. Again, Scott Pruitt, he was a former in the EPA. He led a lawsuit from 28 states against the EPA's clean power of the anti-coal pollution under Obama. So it's just like, why? Like, your agency, what you're working for, you're supposed to protect the environment and you're not. It's like so questionable. It's just like, why are you doing things that's against like your title, especially anti-coal? And like the reasoning behind it, it's again like it's cheap, it's easy, profit, economy. There's like connection again. Yeah, the cabinet was filled with climate deniers, and it influences America's policy, which essentially means, yeah, less funding for environmental organizations, education infiltration on curriculum with anti-science propaganda. We went through this earlier today during our discussion when I asked, like, is this the first time you guys have learned? A lot of you guys said no, like you guys have learned this through social media and not through school. So this is like how it affects, like we should be taught climate change, how to conserve our environment, but we're not. Global climate change agreements are underestimated. Yes, no climate justice. Yeah, Donald Trump not denying climate change, but it could very go back. Like it will never reverse itself. Once we go past the 1.5, like it's unprecedented. Like we don't know, unpredictable. Everything that we know, well, we can't predict anymore. So yeah, we have to reduce emissions drastically in the next 10 years, and we have to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, sorry, by shifting to clean energy and by protecting and enhancing the natural ecosystems, and we can remove those pollutants from the air and save our home. Yeah, this is our power as consumers. So California energy sources, their #1 main source of energy is from renewables. 2% is from natural gas, not the best, but it's lower. 3% large hydro, 4 imports, and 5 nuclear. So yeah, so California, you're doing amazing, sweetie. So yeah, we need to start prioritizing a planet and profit. The way California was able to get their renewables, main source of energy for renewables, is because of people like fighting for it. It's not gonna just happen one day. Like people had to fight for it. So it's like we have to start prioritizing the planet over profit. We need to start living sustainable lifestyle to ensure our survivability. If the world gets, you know, uncomfortably hot and dry and everything, it would be people, sorry, this is gonna be a little morbid, but people will probably die off. The earth is resilient, the earth will bounce back. So it's more of like our survivability. Yeah, the relationship between fossil fuels and the greenhouse is direct. As more fossil fuels are burned, the stronger the greenhouse gases get stronger. As you can see, transportation, 29% of it, electricity, industry, commercial, and residential. And this is again back to like, it's kind of like, it's brought down. It's like, oh yeah, like if you stop using single like use plastic straws, you'll make a difference. But this is commercial and residential, and that's still like 12%. So yeah. So time we start taking care of our planet and our future. So a couple things is shopping ethically and sustainable. Like in the chat, we saying thrift shopping, second, buying second store, reusing what you have, if possible, buy an electric, hybrid, or like fuel efficiency car, walk, bike, carpool, use public transportation to move around. And then it's also like say goodbye to single-use plastic. That's like the easiest thing right now with like COVID. A lot of single-use masks, single-use like plastic, like every time I go out, I always see them on the ground. And that's something now like with the world that we're living in. So it's like thinking smarter of like the items that we use daily and just refusing no to like unnecessary stuff that we don't need. Yeah, and our future is in our hands.
Just real quick on that whole say no thing. I'm very big on sustainability. Vanessa and I actually met each other, or we didn't meet each other, but we worked together on like huge sustainability projects on our campus, on grants and stuff like that. So we're pretty big on sustainability. I don't know if any of you have ever been to like a restaurant or something where you're like, oh, I don't need a plastic bag. Oh, I don't need like plastic utensils because I carry around like my own utensils. But people will give you a weird look. And I've had people at stores be like, well, why don't you want it? It's free. Like, why can't you just take it and stuff like that? Or I'll ask not to get it and they'll still give it to me. I don't know if anyone's experienced that here, but I know amongst a lot of my friends, that's a very, very common thread because I guess people aren't used to the idea that, you know, you don't need it. So like, why take it? It's not always, again, about the money. You just don't need it. And I see that Leslie has also experienced that.
You asked for no straw, yeah.
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, a very like a lot of places are starting to have, I know like Starbucks has nitro lids, where it's like the sippy lids for like cold drinks and stuff. And that's what I do. Like even the cup I have right now is like a reusable cup and stuff. And again, not to say that you have to change everything, but sometimes when you make a change, and this is a point I'd like to point out to people, like the whole reusable straw thing, right? It's not always about just the straw, right? You have to think more if this is like at the forefront of people's minds, right? If you start checking yourself where instead of buying a plastic water bottle, maybe you reuse your water bottle or stuff like that. Once you start checking yourself, you're gonna start thinking about it more and more, right? So again, it's not always about that one thing that, yeah, if you cannot use the plastic straw, might as well not use it. But again, it's not just about like that one plastic straw. It's about all your following actions, right? Where you'll start thinking more about them and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so now it's like open discussion. Actually, let me refresh.
Real quick, no, sorry. From all the stuff that I was reading in chat, something came to mind. It's like a quick 1-minute video that I want to show everyone. Just a little bit of context. This video is called Keep America Beautiful. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, Vanessa. And it's a PSA. I feel like many of you may have seen it. I saw it in school many years ago. But I just thought of it from everything everyone was saying. Go ahead. Ooh. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Nico, you're on mute. Or I can't hear you. I'm not sure if anyone else can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So just for a little bit of context on this, I believe that this was actually funded by the Coca-Cola Corporation. So the whole Keep America Beautiful campaign, because I know there was a lot of mention about shifting kind of the blame onto consumers versus corporations. So a lot of that started back in the 70s with this PSA that was actually being run a lot. And I know someone mentioned that the person in the video is not even Native American. So yeah, so clearly they had a lot of intentions by trying to portray someone as Native American, showing the refineries in the back and stuff like that. But yeah, again, this is the government and corporations trying to make us kind of pay for what they're doing, what they're putting. You may have never had a Coca-Cola product in your life, but you're still paying for the effects of their mass production, right? And particularly, and like we've kind of been drilling into the session, is those effects are particularly felt in marginalized communities and immigrant communities, right?
Okay. There's one last video that I want to show you guys. I think it's very relevant with the elections coming up. Okay.
This is a group of the world's best climatologists. Every few years,
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Hi, folks. This is Mark Kelly, candidate for U.S. Senate in Arizona.
And Gabby Gifford.
this
Wait, can you guys see my screen? Okay.
We're on the thanks page.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this video is about the Green New
group of the world's
Deal.
best climatologists. Every few years, they gather to tell us what's happening to our warming planet. In 2018, they had some news.
It's very clear that half a degree matters.
This is a chart of how much the global temperature has gone up since we discovered fossil fuels. For a long time, scientists said that we should try to stay under this line, 1.5 degrees Celsius. But that really, we'd be okay if we ended up below this line, 2 degrees. Now they were saying that wasn't quite right, that we're not safe in this zone, and that hitting this line will mean a spike in mass migration, wildfires, deadly heat stress, and it's going to cost us
trillions of dollars, millions of lives, irreversible, forever changes that cannot be undone in centuries.
That's what happens if we get warming to stop here. And right now, we're on track to go way past that.
If action is not taken, it will take the planet into an unprecedented climate future if we compare it to what has happened during all of human evolutionary history.
We don't have a plan for this. So a group of American activists started to make one. They recruited a congresswoman and a senator to turn it into a congressional resolution. It's the first step of a plan that has mostly yet to be written. It's called the Green New Deal. And inside, there's something we might not want to hear. This is the Green New Deal resolution. It's only 14 pages. And to understand what's in it, it's important to understand what's not.
It is not a bill. It's not legislation. It's not a policy proposal. It's not anything that you could pass and make law.
This is my colleague, David Roberts. Dave's written a lot about the Green New Deal, and he says the 14-page resolution is just a first step.
The idea was, what's our shared understanding of the problem and what's necessary to solve it?
The Green New Deal contains basically two big ideas. The first is this question of what we need to do to solve the impending climate crisis. The Green New Deal says what climate scientists say. We need to completely stop burning fossil fuels as much as technologically feasible.
So that means things like rethinking vehicles, energy efficiency standards for buildings, changing the ways that we make steel and concrete.
That's Rihanna Gunn Wright. She's part of the think tank that came up with the Green New Deal.
Policy director of New Consensus.
Rihanna writes policy, and she likes to rattle off things that moving away from fossil fuels will entail.
Moving to electric vehicles, make that home energy efficient. The food that you buy will be grown locally.
The Green New Deal requires building a lot of new things, the things to power the world without fossil fuels. And that'll create new jobs, new industries, an entire new economy. But Rihanna also emphasizes this is going to inflict a cost.
It's going to be a massive undertaking because we're actually asking, how do we rethink the ways that we use energy in our society?
A key principle of the Green New Deal is that it's too late to incrementally move away from fossil fuels. It has to happen quickly and dramatically. Or as Dave puts it,
people don't seem to get zero emissions means zero oil business, means zero natural gas business, no coal business, no internal combustion engine auto business. Like, the number zero means it all has to go.
Here's what decarbonizing will do. When we rip out fossil fuels from the economy, people are going to lose their jobs. And that means they'll lose their healthcare, maybe their homes. But the Green New Deal also has a second part. And this part acknowledges that transitioning Americans away from fossil fuels is a huge and difficult ask, especially at a time when so many live in economic uncertainty.
How can we go to the American people and say, I sure hope you aren't one of the people who loses a job, because then you might die like sick on the street. Good luck. Now, will you sign my bill?
This is the contradiction the Green New Deal describes. It's the part we may not want to hear. That we need to take action, and also that taking action will cause pain. Imagine you're a coal worker. If the US decarbonizes, you are going to suffer. So the second part is a set of promises for how Americans will be protected during the transition away from fossil fuels.
Jobs guarantee, public employment, universal health care, education, and training.
The basic elements of economic freedom that ought to be promised and due to every citizen of the richest country in the world.
And these promises aren't just for protecting coal workers. They're meant to keep all inequality from getting even worse during the transition. Because think about what direction wealth and power usually flow in when new things get built. It's the communities with the most political clout who decide where things can and can't be built. Wealthy corporations jump in to build those projects, and the good jobs go to the people who can afford to get trained for them.
The folks who have the fewest barriers will be the ones who benefit the most, and you're just going to see a replication of the issues that we have now.
In other words, anyone who's historically missed out on those benefits, especially the poor and people of color, could end up even worse off. So the Green New Deal says we should rebuild the American economy in a way that allows opportunity to flow more fairly.
The Green New Deal is about, while we have this chance, why don't we think about that proactively and change it in the ways that people have been calling for it to be changed for generations at this point?
So the first part of the Green New Deal is a set of goals to avoid a global disaster. The second part says we should do it in a way that helps ordinary Americans come out better on the other side. And that's it. That's all that's in these 14 pages. It's just a first step. And now, Rihanna's job is to figure out how to go from this 14-page resolution to an actual Green New Deal, a roadmap for what government needs to do next. And their goal is that if Democrats win power in 2020, there's a plan ready to execute. For now, though, the Green New Deal is just asking our leaders to acknowledge the scale of the problems we face. So, how's that going?
This disastrous plan would be a massive government takeover
that would stifle innovation.
Wasteful and reckless spending.
Rather than setting realistic goals, we would go from about 94 million cows to 0 cows.
That resolution will not pass the Senate because there's no way to pay for it.
Destructive, socialist, daydream.
The Green New Deal is a long shot. But right now, it's also the only plan that acknowledges what we know is coming.
What is the world that we want? What is the country that we want? And how do we get there? And how do we get there in a way that is just? And how do we get there in a way that stabilizes the climate and heals our planet? Because if we don't do that, then there will be no paradigm, because there will be nothing to fight for.
Yep.
Okay, so now it's open discussion. What did you guys think of the video and just overall this today's session? Please do your research on your elected officials. Yes, yes, yes. For those who can't, if you need help registering, Siren does that. You can also pre-register if you're 17 and also get yourself elected. Agreed. Yes.
I can give a quick example. Actually, when I was in high school, my senior year, and I was doing my fellowship at Siren. Siren, obviously, it's a little harder right now, but Siren came out and registered. I talked to like the AP government teachers and all that stuff. Every senior in my high school had to get registered to vote during like our 30-minute homeroom period. So that's like a cool thing that, you know, a lot of schools may be willing to do as well. And we got like 400 people to register to vote in one go, which is insane, right? A 30-minute session.
Look into every politician, no matter if they're a Democrat. Not every Democrat is the same. Yeah. Did you guys see like when the Congresswoman told like the little kids like, yeah, that's never gonna pass?
Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah.
She's actually the senator for where the Siren office is located.
Oh, really?
You all that are in the Bay Area.
She's sketch. And she's a Democrat. She got reelected. She actually sold stocks prior to the pandemic. Wow.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we're getting is be involved, you know, in politics. It's super, super important. The US actually has one of the lowest civic engagement rates of any developed country, which is insane. Meaning that we vote at much lower rates than most other countries that are developed, right? And obviously, I'm sure everyone has seen, you know, youth are the future, this movement, everyone kind of getting woke. But it's important to take it off social media and take it to the polls, right? It's important to take it off social media and make sure we're filling out the census, especially for our families who may not know, or if you have relatives. I had a lot of friends who were not registering to vote, and I don't know why. I can't vote, but you know, I made sure that they were registered to vote, so they would take part simply because, you know, I couldn't. Yeah.
So just like I think right now, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this session, I get to represent my school as vice president of sustainability, and this is only like university, and like let me tell you, like people are like out here watching your every step. So it's like I feel like the pressure now when you're in like those positions of power are so important, and for like me and like my group, the cabinet, like we're being so like we want to be the best, and we know like we are like leading, and like we are like not saying like we're not gonna be like excuse me, like we're here, like we're in your face now, like. And I think that's how it has to be. Like if you have like if there's something, an issue that you're aware of, and like it's not just gonna resolve on its own just by wishing it. Like no, you have to work, you have to put in the work. But yeah, so like, sorry. Yeah, basically I'm trying to say like keeping an eye on those people who are in positions of power, keeping them in check. Yeah.
Guys, I see some people are talking about that's really funny, Nia. I see some people are talking about phone banking and how they've gotten involved. Siren is a 501c3 organization, meaning that we cannot support any partisan candidates or issues. So our phone, again, you can come and phone bank with us. We have a lot of phone bankers actually, but we don't phone bank for any partisan issues. So especially if you're still trying to figure out maybe where you, I know a lot of people have mentioned that they're like politically homeless, or they may not know exactly where they land or exactly who they support. We do a lot of phone banking to inform people of their right to vote, helping them get registered to vote, walking them through, especially on election day. We will call people and be like, hey, do you know where your polling location is? Do you have a way to get there? We do a lot of census phone banking as well. So, you know, if, okay, I see a question of what's phone banking? Sorry, I should have clarified that. Phone banking essentially, yourself or maybe you and a group of people will make phone calls to list of people who your organization or whoever it may be has identified as people of interest, right? So for us, people of interest are people, I know a lot of phone banking happens to East San Jose, where the rate of people who are registered to vote is lower, right? So then we'll call them and be like, hey, you know, we saw that you weren't registered to vote. Did you know that you're eligible to register? Do you know how? Would you like us to help you? And again, we don't tell them who to vote for, but we do help them get registered. Phone banking is when people call. Yeah, has anyone who has phone banked before, do you want to share maybe a little bit of what it's like?
Hi, I phone banked before. I actually phone banked for Edmarchy, and usually all you do is that you have to sign into the system. It's like a very easy process, and then you just create like a phone number through Google Voice, and you just literally read from a script and try to convince voters from that specific party. So like since Edmarchy is a Democrat, you call Democratic voters or people who are undecided, and you try to convince them to vote for them. It can go either way. Some people might not like it. Some people might be very interested, and you're just supposed to try your best to get them to vote for the specific candidate.
And again, yeah, our specific phone banking isn't for a candidate or a specific party. It's you know, just to make sure that we have people registered. But thank you for sharing, Sebastian. Yeah, it's awesome that a lot of people are mentioning that they phone banked before. Super cool. I don't know if you want to open it up for discussion, Vanessa.
Oh yeah, it's open for discussion. So any questions, comments, anything, open now. Script and I just go. Oh.
Yeah, phone banking is really easy with the technology we have nowadays. It's super easy.
Do you get paid for phone banking, or does it depend on like the election or like who you're phone banking for?
Yeah, it depends if you're I'm not sure how it is for Siren. It depends. I know that Siren, most of our phone makers are volunteers, but I think it also depends on who you're phone banking for, right? But we have a pretty big team of phone bankers. Yeah, but did anyone have any thoughts about kind of what we covered today? It was a little bit more general. We didn't necessarily connect it 100% to immigrant rights, just because I think environmental justice is such a complex topic, and then to add the intersectionality of specifically, you know, how immigrants are impacted like that gets a little more complicated for a 2-hour session. But yeah, did anyone have any thoughts?
I like the video at the end where we got to learn more about the Green New Deal, especially because I didn't know I knew the whole part of reducing kind of like the coal and things like that, but I didn't know the parts of, you know, what happens to people's jobs, which is like a big factor. And things that people worry about. So I like learning about that because I didn't know about that before.
Yeah, adding on to that, I kind of have like a second idea because people are going to lose a lot of their jobs. I feel like there's going to be kind of like a whole new like market open with renewable energy. And with that, you're going to have a ton of new jobs because of course people are going to have to manage something like that. And I like people might lose their jobs initially, but I think like when that like opens up, you're going to have a lot more people getting their jobs back.
I think adding on to that, what I found interesting was how they're trying to bring back things, not bring back things, but add things like retraining or bringing more training, making school available for people, and just trying to make sure that people can make that transition and still be taking care of their home, having an income, insurance, all that stuff. And I think that's very important because it's what we've been asking for so many years, for people of color, for people with lower income, just generally. And I mean, it takes a climate issue that's inevitable almost to try to bring it about in this way. And I don't know, I thought that was very interesting that they're trying to bring that into the Green New Deal too.
Yeah, it's like I thought when they're like, we're trying to build a new economy where it distributes more wealth. Thought about neoliberalism. I'm not sure if you guys know what that means. Yeah, I see a couple head nods, kind of. I'm gonna go very, very, very vague. So around like the 1970s, our economy, I guess, yeah, like we went from like neoliberalism in the way like, oh, if we have all our wealth to like the most wealthy persons, it's gonna trickle down to like the minorities, low incomes. So that was the mentality of that. Didn't end up happening. Essentially ended up happening. It's like the rich got richer, and the poor got poorer. And a lot of policies, regulations, just really helped that. And it's like, oh yeah, we're going to create wealth, like we're going to redistribute. And essentially, it didn't do that. It let environmental racism, environmental injustice to happen. Very, very vague description of neoliberalism. It's in a lot. It affects a lot. It's like in our culture, it's in our everywhere, like it's in everything. Yeah, I'm not sure, Nico, if you want to cover neoliberalism a little bit, touch on it.
I'm not super familiar with it, to be quite honest. I would again implore, if you are able to take an economics class, super, super important. I think that just like the kind of big idea here was that sustainability and environmental issues are not just like a hippie issue or the way it's been portrayed a lot, where it's vegan issue. It's a that sort of thing. It's an everybody issue. At no point during this like discussion today have we not talked about politics. Have we not talked about finance laws? Have we not talked about economics? We've had to discuss everything because it's connected to everything, right? We live on this planet, so I think it's super, super important. Kind of my final point today will be, I wrote this paper on like carbon tax, right? And why we have to kind of think differently about the way we approach economics and financing this country. As you saw in the video, a lot of people were referring to the United States as the richest country in the world, right? And we want to think about what rich means. Rich in money, but like who's rich, right? As a country, our GDP is the highest. GDP means gross domestic product, just how much raw money we have. But if we keep measuring success in terms of a dollar amount, there's no way to account for things like inequality or happiness or people's well-being. So it's super, super important. The claim that I've always made is that we shouldn't ever use GDP as the sole measure of success. Countries like Denmark and the Netherlands, I have friends who live in those countries because I used to work with international students. The way they measure, Finland, the way they measure success is based on things like the Gini coefficient and Lorenz curve, where they measure how far apart their poorest are from their richest, right? In this country, I took a labor economics class, and that the bottom 1% of this country from the top 1% of this country are 3,700 times apart from each other. And that's just within the top 1% of this country. So if you can imagine what that's like to top 1% to the bottom 1%, or even bottom 50%, that number is insane. So yeah, I mean, really couldn't be us right now, but that's just an idea I'll leave you all with. Measure success in more than just money, but health, happiness, lack of inequality, or the presence of equality. Yep. Does anyone have any last thoughts as well?
I have one question for everyone. Who here doesn't plan on having any children because of the uncertainty, because of climate change? If you guys
want to share.
put it in the chat. I can't see all of them. Adoption.
Yeah, if you want to share, by the way, you don't have to.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a super good question, because that's actually something that we discuss in some of our classes as well. Mm-hmm. The idea of the sheer amount of humans that are on this planet right now. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So North Americans, just like everyone in the North American continent, they produce more waste, do more greenhouse emissions. It's always this kind of narrative is oh, we have too many people, and it's oh, and we tend to blame it on people in the global South countries, that there's so many people. But when you break it down, they don't even have cars. They probably don't even have electricity. So they produce very little greenhouse gases and take up consuming natural resources. It's us on the North American territory where we consume a lot of resources and just take and take and take in. Yeah.
Topics today. But unless anyone has any closing ideas or would like to bring anything up, I think we can start closing down. I think that's it then. Yeah, please remember that the Siren offices will be closed next week. We will still be having sessions next week, except that only Vanessa or only myself will be in each of the sessions to kind of be respectful of our week off next week as well. So definitely still show up. We'll still be posting about it. Just know that if you send us an email, we may not reply right away because we won't be in the office and stuff like that. And then again, if your families reach out to the Siren offices looking for services during next week, they won't hear back until the week after. Did anyone have any questions about that? Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I hope you guys learned something.
Mm-hmm. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Brenda. TY.